Africa Month is ending and we hope you reflected and celebrated well in the last week. Hello and welcome to Network. My name is Spumelele Zondi. This evening we'll find out about what can be done to close the digital divide in South Africa. Taxi hailing service Uber will start using cash in South Africa soon. We'll tell you about how that will go. Tonight we'll also chat to the man that runs the City of Johannesburg's Twitter account to find out how he manages to keep the humor as they get a lot of angry customers. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. It's News Network at SABC.co.za on email. Let's start with your technology and social media news. Now, it's been almost a year since South Africa missed the international digital migration deadline. The rollout of set-top boxes needed for people to receive a clearer television signal has started happening in some rural parts of the country. But network providers say they need a speedy move so they can properly roll out better internet infrastructure in the country. They say their plans are stalled by the slow digital migration process.
Nowadays, people spend a lot of time doing work, downloading pictures and watching videos on the internet. And as more people get smart devices, the stress on the network that's there also increases. So at times, it would seem to take too long for web pages to open or for files to send over the network because of bad internet coverage in many places. And what would improve the quality of the internet received would be better infrastructure.
I think basically what's happening is that data is exploding. Now, we have to build out fixed, so data is exploding, so which means we need more fixed infrastructure and we need more mobile infrastructure.
When we think about it, it would seem as if the people that are supposed to provide infrastructure are network providers like Vodacom, MTN and Cell C. But they say they've done enough. According to network providers, the answer is with the government.
To be able to cope with the amount of traffic, our traffic's growing 46% a year now. Off a very large base. So what happens is there's only so much physically you can do with the existing spectrum. So in theory, we could launch 4G countrywide overnight. We already have 58% 4G coverage. But what's happening is we don't have enough spectrum to be able to do that.
Like Vodacom, MTN is complaining about the same issue. A year after South Africa didn't meet the digital migration deadline, both network providers say the answer to providing better, faster internet coverage in South Africa lies in switching from analog to digital terrestrial television, or DTT. They say switching would open up the spectrum they need to utilize in order to roll out 4G nationally and later 5G.
The precursor for this spectrum being unlocked is the digital dividend or the moving from analog to digital terrestrial systems. So the Department of Communications together with ICASA is running that process. It's taking a little bit long. So the other side of that process then unlocks the valuable spectrum.
Government has acknowledged some of these issues, but says as digital television is being rolled out, the process needs to focus on people who didn't have television signal previously.
We shouldn't be focusing much on the delays. Those that are in the industry, they will understand that this one achievement is a country that we've managed to move to make sure that it happens and it's happening. There are people, if you visit the Northern Cape now, they are watching television. To them, it was like a dream. For the past 22 years, they never have access to television, but they will tell you now that they're having TV that's working. They've got set-top boxes that has been delivered. Yes, it's a project, it's a new one. It might have its own hiccups, but at the end of the day, I think we're dealing also with the bottlenecks to make sure that the project becomes a success.
Some say better internet coverage, though, could improve the type of education that's needed for vital future skills, which could grow economies.
The Saudi example where they now adopted a curriculum to teach kids coding in schools. And 100% of investors say now they will invest in Saudi Arabia because they are seeing a future for that. So also the positive policy initiatives or regulatory interventions, they can also encourage investment.
But creating such policies would be difficult when a huge chunk of the population doesn't even have access to television signal. This means as government is starting the digital migration process in areas with no TV signal coverage, those that want 4G in all areas of South Africa will have to wait a bit longer while priority goes to rural communities without any information as they lack broadcast signals.
Now, recently we heard about M-Pesa folding up in South Africa. The service has been extremely successful in Kenya. Analysts at the Huawei Service Summit say some companies tend to think the success of an offering in one part of the continent will result in similar successes elsewhere. They advise telcos to treat each African country as an individual place with its own cultures. They say they should consider the type of tech infrastructure available there as well. As many talk about the Internet of Things and 5G, there are people in Africa who still need basic internet connections. So they don't want to hear what the West and the East are doing with 4G and to prepare for 5G when they don't have basic internet access. The advice at the Huawei Service Summit in Cape Town is that foreign telecommunications companies need to make offerings that fit individual African countries' needs.
We are seeing a much more stronger focus on emerging Africa. We are seeing the focus that Namibia is different to Nigeria. It's not just Africa as a whole, and I've heard people, years ago just refer to Africa as Africa. It's not. It needs to be done case by case.
Some, like Huawei at its service summit, are saying that they're already doing that.
In different countries, we have different requirements from the customer side. For example, South Africa's customers have South African customers requirement, and when you go to DRC, they have their own requirements from Huawei. So normally we will customize our solutions from headquarters to adapt to our customers' requirement locally.
For a long time, companies were doing things remotely or visit a country for a week or two and then come up with new products. Experts say that does little to close Africa's digital divide or to come up with the continent's digital solutions.
You need to be feet on the street, understanding the culture, understanding the people, understanding the nation at the end of the day. It's the only way it will succeed. Just because a solution has potentially worked in London or Moscow, Rome, wherever we talk about, doesn't mean to say it's going to work in Johannesburg or Nairobi or Lagos.
So many who came here to listen to Huawei pitch products to them will also be telling the Chinese company about their African country's individual needs. Now, taxi hailing application Uber has launched a cash payment option for its users. This might be good for consumers, but what will these changes do to meter taxi businesses?
Some South Africans are usually skeptical about sharing their banking details online. This usually limits them from enjoying consumer internet services such as online shopping. However, taxi hailing mobile application Uber wants to change this by announcing their cash payment option on Thursday.
We've received a lot of feedback where people have been uncomfortable paying for transactions online, or people who just have a preference for cash over card payments. So it's very important that we are receptive to feedback and give people more options when it comes to riding with Uber.
Though this may come as good news for some South Africans, it might not sit well with others, specifically meter taxi drivers who have been running their businesses with cash. Taxi drivers from across the globe already have qualms with Uber, claiming that the taxi hailing app brings unfair competition into the industry. A recent incident here in Johannesburg saw the arrest of one taxi driver.
I can confirm that the fight took place between the meter taxi drivers and the Uber drivers outside the Gauteng train station in Sandton. Officers intervened to stop the fight. 3 officers got injured when they were stoned. I can confirm also now that one taxi driver has been arrested in connection with the fight.
When asked about the possible backlash of the new cash payment option, Uber Sub-Saharan manager Alan Litt had this to say.
Uber is and always has been an open technology platform. There are a large number of meter taxi operators who continue to operate as meter taxi operators, but make use of Uber during their downtime to increase their revenue and minimize the time they spend being idle. So our intention is to continue with direct engagement of meter taxi operators.
The new option will have random selection as to who gets to pay cash and who doesn't while it's still being tested.
It's completely randomized. So only a portion, it will be more than 50% of people signing up, and 50% of existing riders will have the option available to them.
Bank was dropped in Japan and Huawei files a lawsuit against Samsung. Here's some of the tech stories that made headlines earlier in the week.
An estimated 300 million was stripped off Standard Bank earlier this week. Reports from the Japanese daily The Mainichi said that a syndicate used cloned credit cards to withdraw money from ATMs across Japan. Standard Bank said it had suffered the losses, not its customers, and that it had alerted the authorities. The bank has declined to comment further. Now heading off to China. Huawei Technologies Co. Limited has filed lawsuits against Samsung Electronics for infringement of intellectual property rights. The lawsuits were filed with the courts in California, the United States, and Shenzhen City in South China in the early morning, with infringement claims over telecoms patents and software. Huawei said the dispute involves the fourth-generation cellular communications technology operating system and user interface software. Now off to France. Google wasn't feeling so lucky on Tuesday as the tech giant's Paris headquarters were raided by police as part of a probe into tax evasion and money laundering. Google said it was fully complying with French law. The company has based its regional headquarters in Dublin, where corporate tax rates are lower than elsewhere in Europe. Google had in January agreed to pay £130 million in back taxes to Britain, also prompting criticism from opposition lawmakers and campaigners. Meanwhile, the chief executive of Google's parent company, Alphabet Inc., said startups in Europe require more capital to replicate their success in the US. He spoke on Tuesday in the Startup Fest, a conference in Amsterdam attended by tech company founders, investors, and business developers, including Apple's Tim Cook and the heads of Uber and Airbnb.
There is a model for entrepreneurship. It requires risk capital, serious investments in the universities, and then sort of tolerating the crazy ideas of the young people coming out of it, giving them some seed funding and letting them do it, right? And getting out of their way. That model works. It's produced this extraordinary wealth in America. It is repeatable in Europe.
Schmidt declined to comment on the raid of Google's Paris office on Tuesday. Now back to China. Part subway, part bus, a mass transporter known in Chinese as the busway went on show in Beijing earlier in May. This vehicle has the features of a subway, the ability to transport a lot of people. It can carry 1,200 people in one journey, but the key is its low construction cost.
It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za. On email. After the break, we talk about the city of Johannesburg's very interesting Twitter account. Dumelo Komape, the man who runs that Twitter account, is already in studio to talk to us about it, so stay with us.
Did you go to heaven?
Kelvin is the one who created all this.
What are you fighting over? Us?
If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on Question Time today.
Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Welcome back. Now, running a social media campaign for big organizations is a huge responsibility. One is expected to respond to complaints and compliments without insulting people. Some get it wrong. Do you remember when an H&M customer complained about the lack of black models on posters? The store responded on social media by saying its campaigns are to portray a positive image, leaving many to think black models wouldn't be seen as to portray a positive image of the brand. They got it wrong. The Nando's gets it right a lot, like in its sale of cocktail strings, when they used a popular South African phrase, "Ze right equals." Now, joining me in studio is Dumelo Komape. He runs the social media account for the city of Johannesburg. Hello and welcome to Network, sir.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Now, Dumelo, before we get into that account, what's your favorite social media page?
My favorite?
Or your favorite tweets?
Favorite tweet? By myself? Or by anyone?
By anybody.
Okay. Well, I think my favorite social media account would be Saint Letsy's account. I think it's wonderful, but one of my favorite tweets that I've tweeted is Shower Bathing Group's #SaveWater. And the reason for the tweet was that I was tweeting the messages. It was the time when we had water problems in the city, and so I was tweeting messages. When you campaign, you have scripted messages that you prepare, that you're going to run with. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, you know what, these messages are not reaching anybody. It's the straightforward messages, the beautiful messages, and I was thinking to myself, nobody's retweeting this, nobody's interacting with this. There must be something wrong. Maybe it's not sexy enough, it's not funky enough, it's not exciting enough. Then I thought, let me put off the script a bit and think to myself, what would draw my attention to a government account? We know government is boring, or people just have a different attitude towards government. And on a Saturday or on an evening, the last account you want to visit is a government account. You have all the sorts of account that you might want to visit and have fun with, but not a government account. And the challenge is to create presence as a government account in the middle of a market that is very, very busy. And you have to be in there, you have to create a name for yourself, you have to be there, you have to be part of the funky, the sexy. So I thought to myself, let me tweet this tweet, shower bathing, and it went crazy. And I've been using that approach most of the time to sort of be out there and get some traction on some of the difficult messages that are sort of, I'd say boring.
You have to come up with strategy quite a lot when you're running the City of Joburg's accounts. How difficult is it to come up with a social media strategy, especially when you're using Twitter? Because it's 140 characters. You can use pictures sometimes, you can use video to aid you sometimes, but you're only limited to 140 characters.
Yeah, I have to think a lot on a daily basis about the messages. But one thing I do is I look at the trends and say to myself, what's trending today and how can we leverage? And I'll get back to that point. It's very important. And Nando's does that very, very well. And then the second thing is to say, what are the messages and how do I make them funky? Of course, you go with the times of the day. Obviously, the tweet you sent on a Monday certainly cannot be sent on a Friday or on a Sunday, because those days are different. People are more serious on a Monday and more chilled on a Sunday afternoon. So you want to sort of create two sets of messages, the serious one and the funky one, chilled for Sunday afternoon. So I do that a lot to sort of make my messages consumable to our residents. And in terms of the trends, I see trends as I think of them as stadiums full of people, and I have a chance to get to the podium and say 140 characters and represent and promote the city. And so creating your own hashtag, when there are trending hashtags there, these are big stadiums full of people, it's sort of, I don't find it to be a very good approach when in terms of market reach, in terms of reaching bigger audiences.
Okay, now another issue. Do you ever worry about offending people? Because I'm thinking there's one that you once shared where I think it's someone who was wearing a torn shirt, shirts that are in fashion nowadays, and you said, oh, don't forget to recycle. One was driving a car with the top open and an umbrella, and you said, don't drink and drive. And do you ever worry about offending the people in the photographs and in the tweets?
Not at all. Not at all. And I just want to add to that, to the point I made earlier, that sometimes the image drives more traffic than the actual copy. And I think the South African advertising industry has cracked this very well. Most of the time, they would run visuals that have nothing to do with the copy. And the idea is to drive traffic to the copy. So to get traffic to that copy that says, don't drink and drive, It's a boring message. Nobody cares about that message. It's cliche. Nobody wants to listen to it. Don't drink and drive. But if I use that picture that I used, people are like, what? Are there people who do this? And then they want to see the copy. Why? Because you see the visual before you see the copy.
Yes, no, that's true. And how do you then remain funny and witty in a space where you probably will be getting a lot of complaints? Maybe someone has a billing issue, someone has a water pipe that's burst, and yet you still have to remain funny.
That one is not planned. And I always make sure that I'm at all times authentic. Of course, I have to manage the digital, my digital presence, that it is always professional, but it must come from an authentic person. You can never go wrong with being you. And that's why it's always consistent, that whatever we are doing it every day, consistently, without fail. And it just seems to never end, that it is the fun. Why? Because it comes from the authentic me, and that's me. I give the residents me.
Thank you very much, Tumelo Gomape. And continue making us laugh on that City of Joburg's Twitter accounts. Now, this week, we caught up with Sauti Sol, a band from Kenya. We caught up with the member of the band, Polycarp Otieno. The Kenyan told us what his favorite piece of technology is.
My name is Polycarp Otieno from Sauti Sol, and my favorite piece of technology has to be music production. Like how it's just evolved from all the analog stuff up to now you just need a laptop and a software and you have your music, because that's what I do. I'm a producer. So that's my favorite piece of technology.
The cotton field story is being told through patchwork by artists to celebrate the diaspora in America.
Vitally important in telling the stories of what is happening in the refugee crisis, migration, with questions of immigration. And I believe I, as an artist, have a moral obligation to tell these stories.
It's through paper, brush, and paint that the different faces of women are reflected by this prolific painter.
Women face a lot of challenges, discrimination, sexism, and a lot of other negative, In my paintings, I try to send a different message.
Place of the G-Men and Father Huddleston's mission. Place of Polanski's and the Odeon cinema, and let's never
Join Refilwe for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Saturday at 12.
It is SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Let's take a look at the thermographic camera. They say it knows if you're in love.
This student is in love. University of Granada psychology researchers can tell. Not because she said so, nor by studying her body language. They just looked at thermographic images of her writing hand. 60 volunteers in new relationships put their dominant hand in freezing water for 2 minutes while staring at photos of their partner. Thermal images of the hand taken before and after were then examined.
There is a faster recovery of the hand. You can see the temperature here. So when we compare this image with the image that when we have seen friends, this recovery is faster.
Being in love increased the temperature of volunteers' cheeks, nose, forehead and hands by 2 degrees Celsius. A control group who looked at photos of friends experienced no temperature change.
Temperature is related to the state of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, and depending on how relaxed you feel or how excited you are. And so it's like a very sensitive and very simple to detect measure of the working of the peripheral nervous system.
Earlier research saw volunteers stripped to the waist having their temperature tested while telling lies. A Pinocchio effect showed the temperature of people's noses changes when they're untruthful. The team believes the technology could be integrated into cell phones.
We think that if we really go on to analyze thermographical images in a more detailed way, pixel by pixel and frame by frame in short videos, we can use some machine learning algorithms, and we think we can detect, we can predict to some extent the emotional state of the people just by taking a video of them.
Next month, the world's first thermal imaging phone, the CAT S60, goes on sale, aimed at tradespeople. Future thermographic cameras might let you test anything from your loved one's feelings to the truthfulness of your employees. It's enough to make some people's blood run cold.
I see a lot of people using that on their partners to see if they love them or if they're telling lies. Let's see what some people are sharing on social media. Comrades Marathon 2016 has been trending throughout Sunday. This as the race was taking place between Pietermaritzburg and Durban. The winner for the men's race is David Khatebe and Shanae Bosman for women. Orlando Pirates has been trending for losing the Nedbank Cup. SuperSport United won 3-2. Child Protection Week has started. It's been another popular topic. It ends on June 5. That's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za and email. We leave you with visuals of Africa Week celebrations. From me and the rest of the network team, have a good one. Tabileng Watu is up next.
See the whole world be looking at us, yeah, cause our land is honey, all the future money, and see Akijima, no, Asilali, see Atandi Mali, they want it, yo, they need it, we have it, yes, let the world come and taste this beautiful land, they want it, oh, they need it, yeah, we have it, let the world come and taste this beautiful land. I love my Africa, oh Africa, rise up. I love my Africa, rise up.
Did you go to heaven?
Kelvin is the one who created all this.
What are you fighting over? Us?
If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on